Spain's victory is Europe's victory. So what happened? Spain just won, as we all know, the FIFA 2026 World Cup in the United States. It beat Argentina, led by Lionel Messi, one of the greatest footballers, if not the greatest of all time. It was a tough match, but then Spain prevailed. In Europe, many might have felt a sense of cheer for Spain, but a few, perhaps, felt that they won something when Spain raised the cup. That must change, because Europe needs a sense of European identity. And sports are one of the most important ways to achieve that. Why sports matter politically? In ancient Greece, city-states would freeze their conflicts in order to play at the Olympics. Nowadays, we see examples of cities, regions, and states funding sporting events and infrastructure. For example, Hungary built Puskás Arena, which became one of the best arenas in Europe and hosted the final of the Champions League, raising the country's profile. We see other examples in Europe and in North America. We also see these examples in the Gulf countries. For example, the Emiratis bought and built Manchester City, making it one of the top football teams in the world. And then the Qataris followed with the acquisition of PSG in France. The Saudis have also developed a similar strategy by investing heavily in their Vision 2030 in football, in golf, in boxing, and in Formula One. All these examples show how important sports are to national identity. That is why they are fundamental. Europe's strategic imperative. We also have countries that are foe or friend to Europe, but that matter a lot to Europe, have developed over the recent years. For example, Russia has launched an invasion of Ukraine and has been threatening EU and NATO countries. China has also risen a lot and has been threatening countries on its shores, for example, the Philippines, and of course, Taiwan. We also saw how a powerful ally, the United States, has threatened Europe when it comes to Greenland and other matters, for example, tariffs. And many Europeans have come to question American reliance if Russia invades. At the same time, Europe has been facing very important issues internally. For example, financial issues. France is perhaps the best example because it has been spending more than it can, and now it has significant debt problems. Italy too, Spain too, Greece too. We can say like all of Europe is facing this problem. At the same time, there is a political problem because a lot of European societies are divided. We see the rise of the right as well as the left in Europe, and that divide is a key battleground in Europe. We also see the geopolitical threat. Of course, Russia is still is still pursuing war in Ukraine and has been pursuing a strategy, we can say a Cold War strategy against Europe. All of this we must face. And we need a united political community in Europe in order to face these challenges. We need the sense of a common identity, and we need a sense of a common mission and destiny. And that is why sports are fundamental to this endeavor. Nations are built, not born. Many experts say that nations are forged through war. And we see many examples of this. For example, the United States obviously declared independence in the midst of war against the United Kingdom. We saw, for example, how World War I transformed Russia, the Russian Empire, into the Soviet Union, and other examples like that. But we also see how political communities are constructed over time via institutions, shared experiences, common narratives, and sense of belonging. For example, the American Revolution led to the United States, but not as we know them now, because at first the 13 colonies were a confederation. In fact, we had the Articles of Confederation. And then when they saw that they didn't work, they decided to become a federation. And that is a similar thing that Switzerland has done. Italian unification. When Italy was created, was united, there is this very interesting phrase that Massimo d'Azeglio used, which is, "We have made Italy, now we must make Italians." Italians were so divided by region, also by dialect, so language, and therefore identity, that there was not a sense of Italians or of Italy. But then over the years, the Italian state has developed a sense of common identity. And we also see many international, or better said, multinational states being formed. Belgium, Switzerland, Yugoslavia, also the Soviet Union, of course also the Austrian Empire, that demonstrate that multiple languages and regional identities don't necessarily prevent the formation of a country and a common identity. In the European Union, ever since the 50s, 1552, we have been building institutions, and lately also common political institutions, but we have not developed a common identity. That we must do. Europe already exists in sports. For example, and this is a bit of good news, is that Europe has already been competing as a team since the 70s, 1979, in golf, in the Ryder Cup. So before that, it was Great Britain and Ireland competing together against the Americans. And in 1979, Team Europe was formed. And that transformed the Cup, because ever since the institution of Team Europe, the Europeans have a great record against the Americans in the Ryder Cup. So that already demonstrates how a united Europe can exist in sports but also that it can be very, very successful. Football, Europe's greatest untapped integrator. What we've seen in golf, we haven't seen in football, because every country in Europe has its own league and its own national team. This is unlike, of course, the United States, where you have leagues as the NBA in basketball, where American and also a team from Canada play. In the United States, the MLS, so soccer, what in Europe we would call football, again, we see all the American teams competing in one league plus 3 teams from Canada. So we can see that a league united across a continent and 2 countries can exist and be at a very, very high level. This fragmentation that we see in Europe has led to one league, which is the English-speaking league, the English Premier League, becoming the greatest league in the world when it comes to football, but also outperforming significantly its European competitors. The German Bundesliga, the French Ligue 1, the league in Spain, and also the league in Italy. We need to change that, of course, also to have a more balanced league at the European level. But we also have to ask ourselves a very important question, which is, does football organization, so the way the football leagues are structured right now, does that serve Europe's long-term interests? And I think the answer is not really, and I think we have to reform that at the European level. And I think that we have to take the example of the ABA League in basketball, in European basketball, which sees a league formed at an international level with countries and teams, Slovenia, Croatia, Serbia, even as far as Dubai. It's one single league at a European level. And that is, I think, the road that we have to take when it comes to football too. From national loyalty to European solidarity. I think in a simple step that we can take right now is that in this current form, in this current construction, where we as Europeans, in the final of the World Cup, we had to choose between Argentina and Spain. We can choose, and we could have chosen to support Spain. And that is a step in the right direction. So we have to cheer for other European teams. And we also have to get this sense that when they win, we also win as Europeans. We have to deepen European identity over time, and that will lead to a sense of common purpose and a common sense of the European Union. In fact, I remember an interview of an Arab man, and he was talking about that when, for example, a person from Egypt, and let's say that Egypt does not make it to the next round of the World Cup, but Morocco does. And he says that the Arab people, then they all cheer for Morocco because it's the same Arab identity. And there are very small differences between the 2 countries or the Arab world writ large and Morocco. I think we have to develop that same thing. We are all Europeans. We have a very similar identity. Spain, Italy, Germany, France, whatever country you pick. And we have to go in that direction. We see nowadays how Europe's challenges are all interconnected in the sense that the success and failure of one European country is also the success and failure of the rest of Europe. Europe's security and prosperity are now deeply interconnected. When the success or failure of one European state influences another European state, that is when we have to cheer for other European states, and we also have to feel like we share a common destiny. We laid the foundations of Europe. Now we must make Europeans. So the EU construction began in 1952 with the coal community, and then over time developed to what we now call the European Union. But institutions alone do not create political communities. But we must go in that direction. Sports might very well be one of the most important and powerful catalysts of that change. Right now, Spain's victory might not feel like Europe's victory. It might feel like Spain's victory alone, but maybe one day it feels like Europe's victory. Because we laid the foundations of Europe. Now we must make Europeans. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to read the full Substack article, I've linked it below. Till next time.